Okay, so welcome everybody once again to today's session. And I'm happy for your progress so far and your availability today for the session. I've seen your submissions and they are really good, on point, and exactly the way they are supposed to be delivered. And yeah, it's great. And you have also filled the glossary with some of the words. So I think everything looks fine now, and I'm happy about your performance so far. So I hope that we can achieve our objectives as set. Yeah. There is one thing that I also want us to discuss concerning the remaining modules. Right now, we are left with one module about which is on principles of internal auditing. So that one, I'm going to take you through what auditors train on, actually. So I'm going to take you through that. And before I do that, for every auditor, you need to know your audit criteria. When we get there, I'll explain further about what an audit criteria is. But basically, an audit criteria is the set of documents, okay, or the set of all the standards and other documents that you are going to use as a means or as your tool to perform your audit, or as the benchmark to perform your audit. So that is what we mean in basic terms by audit criteria. So before we go there, before we go into the internal auditing, every auditor, you must know your audit criteria, because that is like your working tool, and you cannot go to work without your working tool. So if you don't understand your audit criteria very well, first, you are going to make bad decisions. Second, you have a lot of challenges from the auditees, because they may find some of your determinations as inappropriate and so on, and that all can affect your output. So I want us to focus, because in this case, our audit criteria, the main audit criteria or the primary audit criteria will be the global gap requirement, especially the control point and compliance criteria. So I want to take my time and introduce you to this particular thing. Yeah, you've worked with it before, you've determined your risk assessment in it. So definitely that assignment is supposed to lead you into knowing some of the things in the audit criteria. And you also did the glossary. So the glossary was to enable you to understand or know some of the terms and definitions which were applied or which are being applied in the audit criteria. So basically, oh, we've lost James. Wow, I hope he joins. So basically, the audit criteria we are supposed to be using, you have had an overview of it. So even though we are still on the program, I think the way you've performed on the risk assessment is very impressive. So I want us to really give time for me to explain the audit criteria to you, not all of it, but the major ones. And I want you to master that, because when you master the audit criteria, especially the compliance criteria and the control point, when you master it and you are assisting any client to implement the requirement, you'll be assisting the client from the point of view of an auditor. So it will be unlikely that the client may not perform well in the presence of a third-party auditor. And that is the key to success as a global gap consultant. You have to approach the implementation from the point of view of an auditor. So you ask yourself, if I were an auditor and I come to this farm and I see this and that and that and that, how am I going to, or what determination will I make on this issue with respect to what the requirements are saying? So this one will require some time. So I want us to decide on one day within, because we'll finish by 4th December. Okay, James is joining again. Because we'll finish by 4th December. By 4th December, we should be running our conclusion. So we have 2 weeks to go. And within these 2 weeks, you need to be able to prepare some of the documents that you must prepare. Okay, so I want us to fix one day within these 2 weeks, very, as soon as we can, so that we can spend some 4 hours continuously for me to drive you quickly through the compliance criteria. We will start a little bit today. We'll start a little bit today based on your assignment, because I want to give you some feedback on your assignment. So when we finish today, we will discuss, so be thinking about it, how we are going to go around it. But if you're able to finish that by next week, the following week, then we start developing the document where I'll give you the template, I'll give you the samples, and we will actually look at one dummy manual where, from the point of view of an auditor, you are going to punch holes in it and identify some of the shortcomings in that manual, and that will be your final assignment. So let's start and be thinking about our timing for the following 2 activities. Great. So let's look at the assignment. You were supposed to determine all the risks assessments in the control points and compliance criteria, all farm-based, crop-based, and fruits and vegetables. Now, when you look at the standard, I'm going to share my screen with you right now, and I'll display the control point and compliance criteria, and I'll explain it to you. Okay, please, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Great. So this is the document that you are supposed to use for the assignment. So I hope you are able to download it. Right? Did you get this document?
Yes, we got it.
Okay. So now, in Global Gap, we have what we call the normative document. So when you look at the definitions, you see what the normative documents are. So let me display to you the definitions, and we see normative documents. A minute, I'm trying to open the document. Okay, I seem to be having some difficulty. So let me explain it. So the normative document, they are basically they are basically the primary documents that will be used. Someone is joining, James. So the normative documents are basically the primary documents that form the basis of the global gap requirement. So when we say the global gap requirement is not only talking about the checklist or the control point and compliance criteria. It is talking about all the documents that a producer must comply with, or all the requirements that a producer must comply with in order to be certified. So the normative document includes the checklist, it includes all the subscopes requirements, it includes the general regulations, it includes the for option 2, the quality management system document, or the requirement for quality management system. So all this form the normative document. There can be other documents such as legislation in the producer country or in the destination market. This will not be part of the normative document, but you must comply with it according to whether it is more stringent or less stringent. So when we say the normative document in Global Gap, all we mean is that all the requirements, both the checklist, the general regulations, and all the other Global Gap requirements which must be complied with before certification is granted. So this forms the normative document. So when you look at the document I'm sharing with you, please, are you still sharing? Are you still seeing it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. I'm having a problem clicking it. So let me stop sharing and reshare. Okay, Kushimo has joined us. Okay, so I'll reshare again. Kushimo, welcome. You can't hear me. Okay, so this, as you can see, integrated farm assurance or farm base. So if you are going to support a fresh fruit and vegetables producer, for example, this is the document you are supposed to use. This document, all farm base, means that every producer seeking Global Gap certification must comply with all farm base. It doesn't matter whether you are doing aquaculture, it doesn't matter whether you are doing poultry, it doesn't matter whether you are doing cattle or fresh fruits and vegetables. Once you apply for Global Gap certification as a producer, you must comply with the requirement of the all farm base. It is applicable to all types of farms. And then once you finish with that, the next one is to go into the subscope. So after you finish with all farm base, what is your branch of agriculture, or what is your branch of production. So when you finish with all farm base, you now move to, if you are doing poultry, you go there. If you are doing cattle, you go there. And if you are doing crops, you go to crops. So we will focus on the crops. So for crops or for fresh fruit and vegetables, you have to comply with all farm base and then crop base, and then you go to fresh fruit and vegetables. Somebody who is doing tea, something like tea or coffee, they are still doing crops. So they will do all farm base, crop base, and then tea or coffee. So that is how the standard must be complied with in terms of implementation. So you look at the kind of the branch of agriculture that your client is in, and then you go into that as the subscope. So when you look at this, you see on this document, first of all, the cover page. Always check the version number, please. When you are implementing GlobalGAP, always check the version number and the validity period or the validity date. What is the difference between validity and obligatory from? You always see this side, valid from and obligatory from. The difference is that when GlobalGAP reviews the standard, or when they come up with a new standard, they first do the draft. So on the draft, you see drafts on it. The draft will go through a consultation process, and it will be reviewed, it will be discussed, and so on and so forth. Once everything, the consultation process is complete, GlobalGAP sits down and now puts the document together as a final document. The final document, if it is a document which have been reviewed, whether a document which have been reviewed or a new document, they always give you the period from which that document can be used, from which you can start using that document, and that is the validity period. So this version, the version 5.2, should be valid from 1st February 2019, which means that companies and producers should have started using this valid document from 1st February 2019. Now, during the validity period, it is not compulsory to be audited on this. You can still be audited on the old version so long as we haven't entered into the obligatory period. Now, let's say you are using, a company is using version 5.1. Okay, from February 1st through to 30th September, if an auditor goes there, okay, the producer cannot be faulted if he hasn't implemented requirements or any requirement in version 5.2. But from 1st August 2019 onwards, the document becomes obligatory. That means that the version 5.1 is automatically out of date. You are not going to be audited on it again. So that is the difference between valid from and obligatory from. So when you are implementing GlobalGAP for your client, or you are supporting them to implement GlobalGAP, please, you have to check the latest version. you have to check the latest version and check the validity period. If it is within the validity period, always use the latest version for the implementation or for your consultation. Great. So I hope that is clear. Any questions so far?
It's clear. Thank you.
Now, from there on, you come to the table of content, which is, we all know what a table of content is, so I will not dwell much on that. Then from there, you come to the introduction. So the introduction introduces you to the document itself and gives you some explanations. You can read it yourself later. Then it comes to what I was saying, the various scopes. So if you look at this side, you see that all farm base is applicable to all farms. Then if you are doing aquaculture, you come to aquaculture. If you are doing crop, you come to crops. If you are doing livestock, you come to livestock. Then those doing crops, under crops, you have fresh fruit and vegetables, flowers and ornaments, combinable crops, tea, plant propagation material, and hop. Then those doing aquaculture, they have fin fish, crustaceans, and mollusks. Then those doing livestock, you have cattle and sheep, pigs, poultry, turkey. And then those doing cattle and sheep, they will go further down to those who are doing dairy and calves or young beef. So that is how the standard is organized. So always you have to look at, first of all, the all farm base, then you look at the next subscope, then you look at the following subscope, and so on and so forth. Then you now come to the matrix itself. So this is the control point and compliance criteria. The first column is the reference number. So AF means all farm base. And then when you go down further, you see CB. CB means crop base, and so on. And FV means fresh fruit and vegetables, or fruit and vegetables. So that is it. So the first column is the reference number. And the reference number must always have the scope in question. So it must always start with whether it's a reference from all farm base, or whether it's a reference from crop base, or whether it's a reference from fresh fruit and vegetable subscopes. So when you are making a reference to a control point, you must refer to the reference number in full. Then following that, you have the control point. So the control point is always in the form of a question. So whenever you take the global gap standard, the control point is always in the form of a question. So this is a question that you need to answer to global gap correctly. So for example, if you look at AF 1.1.1, is there a reference system for each field, orchard, greenhouse, yard, plot, livestock, building pen, and or other area or location used in production? So this is a question that must be answered to the satisfaction of global gap. So basically that is what the control point is about. It's a question which must be answered to the satisfaction of global gap, or according to the criteria set by global gap, the expected criteria set by global gap. Now, after the control point, you come to the compliance criteria. The compliance criteria is a guide okay, is a guide which is providing you with an expectation of what must be done to answer the control point correctly. Okay, I'm taking that again. The compliance criteria is a guide, the minimum requirement which must be met to enable the producer to answer the control point correctly as expected. So always the compliance criteria provides additional information about how the control point can be met. And as a consultant, you need to understand very well the implications of the compliance criteria. The compliance criteria is the minimum. The producer can do more than that, but they are not expecting to see anything less than that or anything that deviates from that. So it is a minimum which must be seen or which must be implemented in order to answer the control point. Then the next one, you come to the level. So there are there are 3 levels. There are majors, there are minors, and there are recommendations. The majors are, you need to get, a producer need to get 100% in the major, all the majors. In essence, what they are telling you is that all the control points with levels of major must be met. That is what they are trying to tell you. So when you go to the formula, we'll look at the formula. A producer must satisfy 100% expectations for all the majors. For the minors, the producer must satisfy up to 95%. That means that there are some minors, if you don't get them right, it doesn't affect you, so long as you get up to 95% of the minors correct. Then you have the recommendations. The recommendations are not obligatory. Okay, they are not obligatory. So if you don't implement the recommendations, it doesn't still means that you are not in conformance to the standard. So basically, this is how the control point and compliance criteria is organized. You see in Global Gap, you have a document called Integrated Farm Assurance, which is what we are looking at right now. You see, Integrated Farm Assurance, all farm-based. Okay, so when you take the Integrated Farm Assurance, you realize that it has all the subscopes as far as crops are concerned, fresh fruit and vegetables are concerned. So when you take it, you see that it is an integrated document which has all farm-based, crop-based, and fresh fruit and vegetables. So this is the Integrated Farm Assurance. And then let's move on to our assignment. So in our assignment, we are supposed to go through this document, which I've just introduced to you, and identify all the requirements concerning risk assessment based on the fact that we have treated risk assessment before. Okay, so I saw your work, and in fact, it's very, very impressive, and I really like it. It means that you understand risk assessment well, and you wouldn't have much problems going through it. So let's look at, please, any questions so far or contribution? Any questions so far? Or contribution? Tunde, you have been a farm assurer for some time. Do you have any contribution for us?
You are doing well. You are doing the right thing.
Come again. Come again.
I said you are doing the right thing. So maybe
that I know. I want your
I said you are doing the
contribution.
right thing. You are doing okay. Okay. In what area? Any area, Abi?
Yeah, in any area.
Yeah, I don't
Any
have access.
contribution, share your experience and all of that with us on the integrated farm assurance.
Okay, for integrated farm assurance, I actually know that of recent this year, there's some upload, some updated version, and they included rice. Before it was just horticulture, fruit and vegetable. This year they also included rice in the option. And one thing I actually want to just maybe share is I think there was one I actually did in a Kaduna sort of. One thing I've realized is that for our client always want the shortest cut. Yeah. So they always look for a way not to follow the whole process, because sometimes following the due process there's always cost implications. So they always find a short way to achieve whatever they want to achieve. Yeah. So in the process, sometimes when you advise them to do this, they're like, is there any other thing that we could do? Especially some people, which we all know, those nationals, they always want to have a shortest part. And I think for our risk assessment is very, very basic. You know, one of the things that they always say, especially when you are doing, because we have been talking about option 1, option 2, especially option 2. I don't think option 2 is part of the what policy is looking at.
Option 2 is not part for now.
Okay, for option 1 is a bit easier. It's a bit easier than option 2. For option 1, one thing that we always look at, if we can understand the risk assessment, which is the major thing we've done, the risk assessment is very, very key. As you rightly said then, I think for our client then, it was actually one of the standards was training of their staff. So training of their staff. The person actually wanted, because the staff did not know anything about Global Gap, he wanted us to train them within 2 days, and that was all. He just wanted them to get the certificate of attendance that they've attended this training, and that was all. And at the end of the 2 days, the level of their knowledge, because I measured the knowledge, the highest got 45% for basic questions. So they needed more training, but they didn't give them. So during the audit, water passed Gary. So, so there were several questions they were asking them that they couldn't even answer. And one thing about auditor is that they are not trying to look for fault, sort of, but they just want to know one sincerity from you, whether the company want to implement it or not. And during the first audit, they are always friendly. That's one of the things I've realized about auditors. They are always friendly during the first audit. And what they always tell you is this: they are here so that you can know better on how to implement. And I think for risk assessment, that's why I really like it when you actually gave us that assignment on risk assessment, because that's the basis, that's the foundation. It's got from the risk assessment, that's when you develop your manuals, you develop your procedures, policies, and the likes, and it must. And even in the checklist, if you check the checklist, you will see that most of the questions after have you conducted risk assessment on hygiene? The next thing is, do you have a management plan that will mitigate the issues there? And all the things will be referring to the risks. So you cannot come up with one solution without linking into the risks, how you are solving it from the risks. I think that's why I said you are doing well. And from my experience, I've had the good people, the good clients, and the client that refuse to want to
listen to you. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so let's look at it. So the first, so basically for risk assessment, for the farm base, I can count all farm base 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Crop base, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then fruit and vegetables base, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. So let's look at them. And I think that a lot of you had it correct, or everybody had it correct. So when I finish, I'll upload the model answer on it with some little bit comments to elaborate more on it. So let's look at, you have risk assessment at AF 1.2.1. Okay, please, can you see AF 1.2.1 here?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so you see, is there a risk assessment available for all farm sites registered for certification? This includes rented land, structures, and equipment. And does this risk assessment show that the site in question is suitable for production with regards to food safety, the environment, health and safety and welfare of animals in the scope of the livestock and aquaculture certification where applicable? Now, let's look at the control point. So as I explained, the control point is the minimum expectations of GlobalGAP about how to answer to the compliance criteria is the minimum expectations of GlobalGAP as how to answer to the control point. So let's see, a written risk assessment to determine whether the sites are appropriate for production shall be available for all sites. It shall be ready for the initial inspection and maintained, updated, and reviewed when new sites enter in production and when rates for existing ones have changed, or at least annually, whichever is shorter. The risk assessment may be based on a generic one, but shall be customized to the farm situation. Risk assessment shall take into account potential physical, chemical, including allergens and biological hazards, site history for sites that are new to agriculture. History of 5 years is advised, and a minimum of 1 year shall be known. Impact of proposed enterprise on adjacent stock, crops, environment, and health and safety of animals in the scope of the livestock and aquaculture. See Annex AF1 and Annex AF2 for guidance on risk assessment. Annex FV1 includes guidance regarding flooding. So when you are doing your risk assessment, okay, they have given you the guidance. You don't need to do anything extraordinary or reinvent the wheel. Let's look at the guidance. Okay, I hope when you were doing your work, you saw the guidance. Okay, if you didn't see it, we'll look at it. Now see, Annex AF1, GlobalGAP guidance, GlobalGAP guideline, risk assessment, general. So you see the way they have titled it, general. So this is a general risk assessment, general steps for conducting risk assessment. You have to take time to read through, but if you have done HACCP, you don't have any problem here. Let's look at the template. See the template. This is similar to what we looked at the other time. And they have actually given examples. Okay, they have actually given examples. So you, the consultant, you have to look at this document, study the situation of your client, and try to adopt, because they are saying that the risk assessment can be a generic one. So it means that you can adopt this same mode of risk assessment and adapt it to the situation of the client. Okay. There is also AF 3.1, which is on hygiene. So this AF 3.1, does the farm have a hygiene risk assessment for? Does the farm have a written risk assessment for hygiene? So you see that there is hygiene here, The written risk assessment for hygiene issues covers the production environment. So look at the difference here. You see hygiene risk assessment in FV, the fruit and vegetable subscope. And you see hygiene risk assessment here. There is a difference. So hygiene risk assessment, you have to distinguish between them. This one is written risk assessment for hygiene issues that covers the production environment. So when we are talking about the production environment, we are basically talking about the field or the greenhouse or the orchard. Let's look at the one in FV and let's see the difference well. So that is FV 1.1.1. Okay, so this is FV 1.1.1. Does the risk assessment for the farm site carried out as identified in AF 1.2.1 make particular reference to microbial contamination? You see how they are linking it. So when you do a risk assessment for the farm, you have to do for the site, taking into account environmental, health and safety, and all those things which have been mentioned in 1.2.1. If you do that, you'll be complying with the all farm base. But if you are not, you haven't done microbial risk assessment, specifically on microbial risk assessment, even though you'll be complying with the all farm base, you will not be complying with the fruit and vegetable subscope, because the fruit and vegetable subscope is asking you that do a microbial risk assessment for the site. Now let's look at the compliance criteria, what they are expecting. As part of their risk assessment for the farm site, CAF 1.2.1, producers shall identify the location of nearby commercial animal operations, composting and potential sources for ingress by domestic and wild animals, and other contamination routes such as floodwater intrusion and dust. So you see clearly here that all the risk assessments that you are going to do at AF 1.2.1 for environment, health and safety and all of that, you also need to add on top of it microbial risk assessment, which take into consideration the things that we have mentioned here. That is animals, composting, and other contamination routes such as floodwater, intrusion, and dust. Okay, then let's look at the next one, which is okay, so food fraud, you have it, health and safety, you have it, food defense, you have it. The one I didn't see much is on the fertilizer storage. Now let's look at that. That is 4.3.2. That is, sorry, it is fertilizer. CB 4.3.2. CB 4.3.2. CB. The way that one is structured, if you don't pay attention, it can escape you. Because there are some of the risk assessments which are conditional. And that is one of those risk assessments that are conditional. Look at it. It's here, CB 4.3.2. You see in a covered area. But when you look at the compliance criteria, look at it well. I'm zooming in. The covered area is suitable to protect all inorganic fertilizer, example, powders, granules, or liquid, from atmospheric influence. Example, sunlight, frost, and rain, high temperature. Based on risk assessment, that is a risk assessment that is taking into account fertilizer type, weather conditions, storage duration, and location. Plastic coverage could be acceptable. It is not permitted to store lime and gypsum in the field as long as the storage requirements on the material safety data sheet are complied with. Bulk liquid fertilizer can be stored outside in containers. Okay, so look at, the thing is actually starting from here. It's starting from 4.1. Advice on quantity and type of fertilizer. Our recommendations for the application of fertilizers, organic or inorganic, provided by competent and qualified persons. Then records of application. Do records of all applications of soil and foliar fertilizer, both organic and inorganic, include the following criteria here. So here you will not see the full question. You see field, orchard, or greenhouse, but this is a continuation of the statements here at the top here. Application date, apply fertilizers, apply quantity, etc., etc. Then here, fertilizer storage. Are all fertilizers stored separately from PPPs, plant protection product, in a covered area? So it means that this risk assessment is conditional. It means if the thing they are using to cover their fertilizer is plastic, they have to do risk assessment. Taking into consideration the fertilizer type, weather condition, storage duration, and location. So when you go to a client and the client is storing the fertilizer and the fertilizer is in the plastic, how do I even put it? Plastic bag, or is covered with plastic, they need to do risk assessment taking into consideration the type of fertilizer. Why do you take the type of fertilizer into consideration? Whether it is liquid or solid. I hope you are following. And then weather conditions. Why do you take the weather condition into consideration? Because when it is too hot, it can heat up the plastic. The storage duration. How long are they going to store it? And the location where they are storing it. So the risk assessment must take into consideration these factors. And if you have more to add, you can add, but this is the minimum. So you get guidance on this one in the guidance notes. So please, this document, it is as good as taking a lecture on risk assessment. The annexes. It is as good as taking a lecture on risk assessment. So when you go back, take it, if you want to understand your risk assessment well, take it and read the annexes, the guidance notes, and it will give you further clarifications on it. So I'll share all the risk assessment I found. I'll share it in a Word document for you. Now, when you get it, it becomes a permanent tool for you, because whenever you want to support a client, you don't need to go through all the documents to identify the risk assessment. You have now identified it already. All you need to do now is to understand the minimum requirement, the compliance criteria. So when you get it, if what you have identified, I've added some, I have a chart. Okay, it's from Tunde telling me the Olumide's number is not going through. Okay. So all you have to do now is to study the compliance criteria concerning risk assessment and understand it. That is what will distinguish you from a good consultant and a bad consultant. The way you understand how to implement the compliance criteria. Because look, if you take, for example, AF 4.1.1, okay, James is unable to join us. He will have the recording. Does the producer have a written risk assessment for hazard to workers' health and safety? This requirement can be implemented in various ways, depending on the extent of the complexity of the client you are dealing with. So once you understand, for example, the written risk assessment can be generic, blah, blah, blah. The risk assessment shall be reviewed. Okay, examples of hazard include, but are not limited to, moving machine parts, power take, blah, blah, the ones we look at. There will be some companies that will not be using this moving machine part or all those things mentioned here, but they will be using other things. It is up to you to know how these things pose risk to their operations in terms of the standard. Okay, so if you want to be you want to support your client well, or you want to perform well on this risk assessment, try as much as you can to decipher what the compliance criteria is expecting, and you have to twist it around and around and around. You can get several ways of meeting the control point in a cheaper and less cost-effective way. Let me show you something. I want to show you a typical example of how implementation can vary between companies.
Mr. Babatunde, while Mr. Shaz is looking for that, the Matra is looking for. Mr. Baba, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. I just have a question with reference to the contribution you made earlier on. Thank you for that, of course. That's a very good field experience, and that's also what we need. Now, you talked about assisting a client in implementing global gap system or standard, so to say. But at the end of the day, due to one thing or the other, they couldn't get certified because they failed the audit, so to say. So what would be the implication of that on your own professionalism, your company, or is there anything one should have done differently that should have made them to be certified? Or I don't know whether you get my question right.
Okay, yes, I got your question right. Now, it depends on what, for you always want your client to actually get certified. But the problem is that when you actually advise the client and the client refuse to do it, then that is no longer from your own part. It's now the issue of the management. For instance, I will not mention a name. It's like you've advised a client, yes, according to the standard, you actually have to assess, if you are doing maybe option 2, you have to assess each farmer using the standard. All the farmers under you, if it's 200, you have to assess all of them, do an internal audit for all of them. Now, you have to have done an assessment, get a report and the like. And the client said, no, we cannot do that. It's expensive, we cannot do that. And you let the client know the implication of it. And the client said, no problem, I'm okay with the implication. I don't have that money. Just let us keep this. Let's look for the easy one to implement. So for you as a professional, it's 2 things you have to do. It's either you tell them that I can't continue with this because if you don't implement this, there is no way you can pass. All this other thing is that you let the client know that if you don't implement this, you cannot pass. And if the client said, no, I have to. But for me, I feel that as a professional, you should just resign and don't take that job again. That is what it is. So, but for the other side, for you to actually prepare a client and doesn't get certified, professionally, it doesn't look well on you. And 2, like the way I do my own service is that most of our clients pay us the last tranches of our money, which is the 40% after certification. So if they don't get certified, we don't get the last payment, which is something that we always desire to get. So it also puts us on our toes. It's more of a performance for us too, that we must get certified because that the client must get certified. But as a professional, if you don't get certified, it's a dent to your image, sort of, because you are meant to prepare them. And if actually the reason why they didn't get satisfied is because maybe they didn't prepare one document, or they didn't put some policies in place or some procedures in place, which you should have told them, then it's a dent on you. But if the reason for not their certification is like, for instance, there was one issue that happened, is actually not for global gap, another standard, which they actually frown as forced labor. So you as a client as a organizer have told them about forced labor, you explain. But the client is insisting that is how it's been done in the North. That in the North, security works 12 hours, they go home, another one takes over, and they work from Monday to Sunday. And from the standard, they shouldn't work more than 42 hours a week. And you've told them, when the auditor comes and realizes that there is forced labor, automatically you fail that standard. After there is forced labor, you fail that standard. And they failed. At that point, it's not a dent on you. It's because the client refused to actually accept your advice. So that one is not a dent. You are free for that. But if it were to be that you never told the client about that, the client was not aware, which you should have done, then that's a dent on you as a professional. And it's not good because, referral, mouth to mouth, they just say, oh, that consultant actually prepare for certification and he couldn't get that certification. So that's a dent on you, or your own, or you as a professional. I think I'll be able to answer that.
Of course. Thank you so much. That's impressive. Thank you. Mr. Shaz, you can continue, sir.
Great. So this is a typical example of how implementation of requirements can vary between companies. Now, look at this. This is a toilet facility. This is also a toilet facility. You realize that one of them or both of them don't have the same cost. They don't have the same cost. The one on the right will cost differently from the one on the left. So if, let's say, somebody is having a 100-acre farm, okay, and the 100-acre farm, maybe he has 20 acres 3 kilometers away, 50 acres 4 kilometers away, 30 acres, let's say 5 kilometers away. The standard requires that sanitary facilities should be present on the production field. So how are you going to help the client to implement that requirement based on his budget? If you look at this one, if you want to do this, it means that if you look at the one on the left, it means that you have to do it on all the 3 sites, and the cost will be different. If you look at this one, it is mobile. It means that whenever the workers are moving to a new field, they can move it along with them. And it can always be adapted to meet the expectations of Globaga. So if you look at the left side, the side of the one on the left, the mobile one, you see certain things there: soap dispenser, hand washing stuff, you see a waste bin, you see all these things are there. So you realize that taking this to the field based on the fact that the farmer has the fields spread across several kilometers, you realize that it is up to you to advise the farmer. Maybe he only has this mobile toilet. He doesn't have the soap dispenser. He doesn't have the hand washing facility. He doesn't have the waste bin, and so on and so forth. It is up to you to study the situation, what they present to you, and look at what they are supposed to have, and then you advise them to adjust accordingly. So if I go to a farm and I realize that they have something like this and they can move it around, but they don't have hand washing facilities, all I can do is to tell them to find a designer who can make a hand washing facility inbuilt into this thing for them, and they will be good to go. You make sure that all the hygiene requirements are met on the facility. You still can have this, but if you don't meet the hygiene requirements and all the expectations as far as sanitation is concerned, you will still not pass. Let's look at another example. Let's look at this. Okay, so you see that somebody can have a hand washing facility made of this porcelain basin and all of that, and it comes at a cost. This is also a hand washing facility for whoever uses the chemical store, right? So you realize that yes, he doesn't have a hand washing facility when you go there, but how can you help him to meet that requirement without his budget going up? So we know that there should be hand washing instruction, and you see, look on it, they have pasted a hand washing instruction there on the wood here. You see it clearly, and also you see on the wall, because it is a chemical store, they have posted certain things there, like accident procedure and so on. And then they have posted certain things on the door, no smoking, no drinking. All these things are instructions. They are working instructions. They are part of the working instructions. So you see how you can support your client to adapt or comply with the standard at the minimum cost as possible. So if you go there and you go and tell them that you need a hand washing facility, they will be looking at a big budget. Hey, do I need to bring a poly tank here, or a water holding tank? Do I need to have a basin, a porcelain basin? Do I need to connect a pipe? But Globagap is not telling you what kind of hand washing facility that should be there. They are not telling you. So however you can provide a hand washing facility to meet the requirement, once there is the hand washing facility, meeting the requirement, it becomes you are complying. So it is up to you to be innovative, because it is not only about interpretation of the standard, but how you can interpret the standard in the context of your client, and use little things to improvise solutions for them. Okay, let's look at this. This is a changing room. GlobalGuard requires that there should be a changing room with lockers and all of that. Okay, so you see this is a state-of-the-art changing room for the workers. It is not every producer who can afford such a state-of-the-art changing room. So your question will be, how can I help them to obtain a changing room at the minimum cost without infringing on any of the control points or compliance criteria? So it is up to you to think, look at their situation, look at what they have, what they don't have, look at what they can adapt and what they cannot adapt, and then you try to work out a solution with them. Look at this. This is also a hand washing facility. Compare that to this. Compare the two. Let me put them side by side. Oh, because I'm sharing, I cannot manipulate. So, but look at it. Look at it. Both are hand washing facilities situated at different stations in the operations. Look at it. A company can afford this, but another company too cannot afford. It doesn't mean that they should have something like this. They can have something. All these things serve the same purpose. See, they serve the same purpose and they provide the same effect based on risk assessment. Okay, so that is how it's supposed to be. Okay, great. So any questions so far? Let me make a new share. Okay, so can you see my screen? Okay, so these are the other risk assessments: organic fertilizer, water and environmental risk, sewage water. Now, the sewage water, even though it's at 5.3.1, CB 5.3.1, it links with CB 5.3.2 and FV 4.1.1. And for sewage water, risk assessment is only required when it is believed that the company is using treated sewage water. So you see that this risk assessment is conditional. It's conditional. If they are using sewage water, then CB 5.3.1 and CB 5.3.2 and FV 4.1.1 will apply. Another one is CB 4.3.2, the fertilizer. That is also conditional when they are using plastic coverage. Okay, so I'll share this with you later on. Let's look at please, any questions so far?
Okay, you said you will share the document with us, the one you just showed us now, to give us an overview of the.
Yes.
Okay.
So when you get it, this is all the kinds of risk assessment that is needed in GlobalGuard. Just keep it. It becomes a tool for you. Just keep it. You don't need to, after this training, you don't need to be running helter-skelter looking for control points in risk assessment. It's here for you. Simple, makes your work easy. So
thank you.
Yeah, when we come to plans and all the procedures, I'll do it the same way. So you have your document. Even if you go to the client without carrying the standard, you know what to go and check for. Great. Okay. Okay, so please, any questions so far?
No question from my part.
Okay. Now let's discuss assignment 2, which will be for next week. In assignment 2, let me share it with you.
Do you believe that? I thought that you asked us to do the assignment 2 when I saw it on the group. So I started doing it. It was Kushimo that told me that.
Okay. In fact, I would have loved that you do the 2 tomorrow, but you do the 2 together. But I realized that it would be too much of a work for you. So I said, no, let me push the deadline for it. Even the assignment 1, I've pushed the deadline to Sunday, just in case somebody is missing out. So this is assignment 2.
Is there a way, sorry, Charles, is there a way to, I finished assignment 1, but there's no way for me to upload it as we usually do in other courses.
Oh, really? Okay.
On my own platform.
Yeah,
I didn't see
it.
Nothing is technical.
Okay. You can send it to me by email.
Okay.
Yeah, you can send it to me by email.
Okay.
It's a little bit technical. If you want to upload it, it was Kushimo that taught me how to do that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so let's look at assignment 2. For the listed compliance criteria issues, so these are the compliance criteria issues. They are here in the first column. State the required plan, procedure, and record which must be implemented for compliance with requirements in Global Gap Option 1. Recommended reference document, Integrated Farm Assurance version 5.2. So you can use the document we use now. I think we looked at this the last time. Okay, let me explain it again. So you come to site management. Let's go to site management. Please, can you see the Integrated Farm Assurance document?
Yes.
Okay. Let's come to site management. You go through it. What management plan, what procedure, or what record will be needed for site management? So site management starts with site history. Here I'll advise you to focus on the compliance criteria, because that is where the document will be mentioned, if any. Even if it is mentioned in the control point, they will still mention it in the compliance criteria. So you can focus on the compliance criteria. Here, AF 1.1.1, is there a reference system for each field, orchard, greenhouse, yard, plot, blah, blah, blah? Compliance shall include visual identification in the form of a physical sign at each field, blah, blah, a farm map. Okay, you see that here it is or a farm map. It means that you can get a visual identification or a farm map. It doesn't mean farm map is compulsory or visual identification is compulsory. Any of them can work. So is there any record or plan that is required here?
Yes, a farm map is a record.
Who also has another opinion? Okay, so you see that here they are talking about a reference system. So anything that can make a reference to the field is fine. So here they are not expecting any record, they are not expecting any plan. All they are expecting is a reference system. So
Charles, sorry, can I ask this question? Will a survey plan for that particular farm suffice if it exists?
Okay, now let's look at the map, the requirement. It says a farm map which also identifies the location of water sources, storage and handling facilities, ponds, stables, etc. And that could be cross-referenced to the identification system. So if you have a survey document, is the survey document answering all these questions on it? Is it making references to things on the farm?
No.
Okay, so this is what they want. So, and this doesn't have to be a professional map. It can be a sketch. So you can just provide a sketch, not even up to scale. You can just provide a sketch and show that the pack house is here, plot A is here, plot B is here, etc., etc. That would be enough. That would be enough. Now let me show you.
So is that not a record? Can't we classify that as a record?
You can classify it as a record.
Okay.
But the standard is saying a reference system. So for AF 1.1.1, AF 1.1.1 is treating the farm map as a reference system.
Okay, not as a record. Okay.
Not as a record. But under certain circumstances, it will be a record. But if you want to answer to AF 1.1, you must present your farm map as a reference system. So you see that they keep using the word reference in that compliance criteria.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me show you something. Virtual farm. Okay, I can't find it. I wanted to show you an example of how simple a reference system can be. You can even use a stone, right? A piece of stone as your physical sign. Okay. Please, any questions so far? Now let's look at the next one. Is a recording system established for each unit of production or other area or location to provide a record. So this is for livestock. So it will not be applicable for crop base. Now let's look at AF 1.2.1. Has a management plan that establishes strategies to minimize the risks identified in risk assessment AF 1.2.1 been developed and implemented. So here you see that the management plan is required to meet the requirement of AF 1.2.2. So this is one of the examples. Let's look at the compliance criteria. A management plan addresses the risks identified in AF 1.2.1 and describes the hazard control procedure that justify that the site in question is suitable for production. This plan shall be appropriate to the farm operations, and there shall be evidence of its implementation and effectiveness. Note, environmental risks do not need to be part of this plan and are covered under AF 7.1.1. So this is, you need a management plan to comply with AF 1.2.2 based on what you will get from AF 1.2.1. So this will be one of the examples of the management plans to get. And there are a lot of management plans required. There are a lot of records. Let's look at records. Let's look at, so records, you see some at the fertilizer side. So that will be crop base. We've lost somebody. Said.
Not lost.
We've lost Said. Okay, so see, records of application. CB 4.2. So you see that from everything under CB 4.2 deals with record. So there should be records of all application of soil and foliar fertilizer. So here the record will be fertilizer application record. Okay, so when for example, let's come here. Let's come to the template. Fertilizer application. So here, you list all the required records here for fertilizer application. And you don't need to write this. You can just write fertilizer application record. That's all. Because everything here is talking about what should be on the record. Okay, so the record must have the reference of the field, the application date, the type of fertilizer, the quantity applied, the method of application, and the operator details. So this would be the typical fertilizer application record. So you, the consultant, you have to design a template for them as far as this record is concerned. And when we get to, after we finish this assignment, we are now going to pick all the plans you identify one by one and develop them. We are going to pick all the records you identify one by one and develop the necessary templates to help them to keep those records. So when we finish, that one also becomes your property. You can adapt it to any client that you want to adapt it, and you don't necessarily need to go through the standard all over again, because you might have already identified all the records. And based on that, we are going to develop all the templates needed, and you get all in one document. It is, all you have to do is to use your innovation to adapt it to the situation of your client. That's all. And then this training, I'll be happy that it will end as planned. So this will be the next foundation. We have built the first one, the risk assessment. We are going to the next foundation, identifying the records, plans, and procedures. When we finish, we now go to the next one, which will be developing these records and these plans and procedures. And then we will now finally look at how to do the audit, the internal audit, which will be like a needs assessment. I think Tunde and Kushimo have a lot of exposure to that. So when we are done with that, then the training will be over by 4th December. Please, any questions so far?
Thank you.
Okay. I think we've spent how many hours now? About 1 hour 42 minutes or nearly 2 hours. Okay, so I think it's about time we bring it to an end for the day. And
so when is our next Zoom meeting?
yes, that is the question to come, because we have an outstanding discussion from the beginning. Okay, so I think from the beginning, I told you that we have some catching up to do as far as the next module is concerned. And we will need, there should be one sitting where our sitting should go like 3 hours or 4 hours. So I need to know the most suitable time and day which will favor everybody.
That might be very difficult to get, Ogashas. Why don't you pick a time? Then we'll now come forth with our feedback.
Okay.
And see whether it's convenient for all of us.
Okay. Okay, so I'll be proposing next Wednesday. Next Wednesday in the morning, 9 o'clock Lagos time.
When, sir? When? I didn't get that.
Wednesday, the date will be, next Wednesday will be 25th.
What time?
9 o'clock Lagos time.
AM.
Yes, AM, Lagos time.
Okay. Wednesday, okay.
That's fine with me.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Okay, okay.
I think
okay.
I will maybe after the training, when we want to do I will suggest that Kolesibi should try not to fix all the 2-month training or 3-month training towards September, October, November, and December again. It's always a time where I'm talking cyber. It's always the most busiest time for us. But that is peak of our work. Because we are doing more of a private extension now. So and this is the period when farmers are harvesting and we are doing crop cutting exercise, traveling up and down. So for me to sometimes to meet up with deadlines, and I know maybe some of us too, they are having the same issue, but they are not talking. That would advise so only all these 2-3.
Oh, we've lost Tunde. Shit. Tunde, we lost you briefly.
Okay, so like all these 2-month, 3-month training that will be online. Maybe the beginning of the year. That's when we are free. Maybe February, March, April, May. Those are the periods where we'll be more. I know there is not always time, but there are some times that we are more free than the other.
Yeah. Okay, I'll mention that in my report. I'll mention that in my report. So I hope they will give. I believe, I know for sure that Kolesibi really pays attention to the way they plan their training so that it can suit the convenience of the experts. So I believe when I put it in my report,
are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you see me? Or is dark in my room, in my office here?
Yeah, we can see you.
Okay. So Kolesibi really tries as much as possible to be considerate, and they factor in the way their training will suit you as an expert. And Tunde
Yes, sir.
Tunde and Kushimo, for example, as well as Olumide, they've done this global gap with me a couple of times. And I believe that, yes, I believe that they are preparing you for a reason. They are preparing you for a reason because
3 years is not been so. Let that reason come to pass now.
3 years. That's a long time.
Okay. Let me give you a hint. The project manager, Wester, mentioned to me that at the organization level, that means at the top management level of Colecity, they are trying to give a lot of focus to Nigeria, and their information have shown that the demand of service providers in Nigeria is very, very big. That is what he mentioned to me. So it means that they have seen the demand, and they've launched new call for proposals. So most definitely, I believe they will give focus. You know, previously the focus has been on Kenya, Ghana, you know, and other countries. But now they have seen that the demand from Nigeria is huge, especially with global gap. They really, my project manager actually mentioned it to me. So he is very, 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 very interested in this training. He's very interested in this training. So I believe that things will work out eventually for all of you.
Amen.
And they also like putting you in teams. You know, and you see that this training was limited to only 6 people. Before the training, they asked me how many people do I recommend to be part of this training, and I said 10. And at the end of the day, only 6 of you were selected. You see how close the competition, how focused they want to be, because they don't want to spread so many resources, and there'll be so many people trained with so that the job will be divided among so many experts. So you have how many states in Nigeria so far?
Okay, we are waiting.
How many states in Nigeria do you have?
36 states.
Yes, 36 states. So you can imagine if even one company or one producer is applying from one state, the whole year you'll be moving around. You see how huge the Nigerian demand is. Yeah, so I encourage you to keep hoping. I encourage you to keep hoping. Yeah.
Hope make it not ashamed.
But today we would have some discussions about organic. Who else is on this forum who is good in organic?
Said.
Okay. Jimmy, what about you?
I work with a lot of farmers on organic as well.
On organic as well.
And I've also done for Colecity as well.
Okay.
I thought you need HACCP. I thought your strength is in HACCP.
No, crop protection. Organic.
You work with this organic farm. That's true.
Team what? So we were there now. We were there together. Didn't you remember, Mr. Tukawatunde?
Yeah, I just remember now. Well, it's Mr. Said that is posting that I always have in mind as organic.
Okay. So my company back here is developing some organic opportunities. And guys, we can also work on our own. We can also team up. Maybe if even it's not about Colecity, we can still team up and work together. So whenever I see any opportunity, I'll just share, and we can do something together. You know, so far.
That's great, Augustus. Yes.
Yeah. Let me tell you one story. When I started, Kolesipi really gave me the opportunity, the same way they are giving you. They provided me with a lot of training. In fact, sometimes it's residential. You are lucky that you are doing distance. It's residential. You go and stay there 2 weeks. Sleep there for 2 weeks and they'll train you. So
we've done similar things. We've done similar things with Said. I think I was the same training with Said.
Okay.
At TOT. That was 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you see how it works.
Said and James. No, okay. Not James. No, James was the co-facilitator that time with Mr. Ernest.
Okay.
Okay. You guys have done good now.
Yeah. So I went through that, and for the first 5 years, Kolesipi was making about 80% of my revenue. It wasn't that much. If I say 80%, don't see it. It's in reference to the size of my cake. Okay. So my cake was small, but Kolesipi was making about 80%. Sometimes the whole year, everything comes from Kolesipi. And you see, I did that for 5 years, 6 years, even probably 7 years. And now I got a lot of network. So for the past 3 years, Kolesipi has come to about 40% of my revenue. And what they were giving me that constituted 80% is what it constitutes 40% now is about double or 3 times that, but it still constitutes only 40%.
Okay.
You get a point. So you have to develop networking outside. This is a platform they are using to build your skills. And always David tells me, I hope you know David, so that I don't know how to pronounce. I know Jimmy knows him. There is one big man in Kolesipi.
Yes, we've met on he's one of the project manager or
exactly.
Project or something like that.
I believe you'll be meeting him. And he's a very, very, very good and smart guy. Seriously, I admire him a lot. So he told me that, look, Charles, this training we are giving you, we are not even giving it to you only because of Kolesipi. We are hoping that you can even use it outside your relationship with Kolesipi. So this training can go a long way, and all the consultancies I've gotten, it is Kolesipi training and Kolesipi knowledge I use to push myself. You know, so don't look at the benefits just in terms of the working, the revenue generating activities they will provide for you alone. But look beyond that. Look beyond that, because right now they are constituting 40% of my annual revenue. If they are not, if let's say the program should end today, the other ones will also be running, and I will not be hard hit too much. I hope you follow.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's develop the networking as quickly as we can, and then when the programs end and they delay even in starting a new. Look, let me tell you, when I was on Kolesipi PIP, the Pesticide Initiative Program. Okay, they ran Pesticide Initiative Program 1, Pesticide Initiative Program 2, before the Fit for Market started. And when the Pesticide Initiative 2 ended, I wasn't having any consultancy again. And Kolesipi was making 80% to 100% of my revenue. So it took like a year. It took like a year. So how was I surviving then? It was really tough. So that became a game changer for me. So I tried to see how I can be independent and still have a good relationship with Kolesipi. Because if the revenue is not coming from Kolesipi, you'll be hard hit. But if I look at somebody like Tunde, Said, James, Kushimo, Olumide, and even you, Jimmy, I realize that you are already doing your work before joining Kolesipi. You were still consulting before joining Kolesipi. So you already have the muscles to, to be independent of whatever Kolesipi will provide. But when Kolesipi provides to it, becomes a boost for your career. Okay, guys, let me end here. We are already 2 hours and beyond. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your brotherly advice and guidance, Ogasha.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate this.
It's not question.
Okay.
For the assignment you give us, do you want us to do more than 2 for the assignment you give us?
Yeah.
Those are, if you give me more than 2 or only 2, we should just identify.
No, all the issues there. Please.
Ogasha, that work is plenty.
Do you see it? Can you see it? All the issues here. All the issues.
For all the stuff, it's plenty of Ogasha, so that's plenty.
Let me tell you something, Tunde. Tunde, this assignment is not for the purpose of this training, please.
Yeah, I know. It's for the future. It's for actually to help you yourself.
So if you don't suffer today, by all means you're gonna suffer one day. So yeah. So suffer small today. When I'm here to give you guidance.
Okay, no problem.
So that you get it right. And when you get it right, in future, you will not even go through all the suffering anymore. So it wasn't designed for the purpose of the training. It was designed for the purpose of capacity building. Do you understand?
But we hope that we get more clients for Global Gap, because that's the problem right now in Nigeria.
But the demand is there. That's what I told you that
in fact, Mr. Babatunde, that's the more reason I'm not just interested so far for in the certification myself, because
personally
you pay how much in a year? Is it 1,200 euro or something like that?
1,550. That's why this year
you pay that much, and if you are not getting job, and you begin to ask yourself, what is it? Though I'm seeing the essence now anyway, but a year ago I wasn't convinced. But I think I've started being convinced anyway.
Except Kolesipi, and after Kolesipi, I just hope that people can actually maintain that tempo too, because it's actually a challenge right now. Some people prefer other certification than Global Gap, and Global Gap is still one of the easiest certification sort of.
Okay. Okay.
Very correct.
Okay. Anyway, I hope it will be fine.
Thank you so much.
All right.
We are
bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. We're very
thank you. Thank you.
Bye, guys. All right. Bye, guys.
Okay. Bye.
Peace.